Giant Brian, a 12-time ex-convict currently on the run after exposing the UK supermarket Tesco for being a tyrannical dictatorship regime and also stealing a lifetime supply of Freddo frogs. He wasn't fully innocent, he did do that as well. To escape, he had made his way to the beautiful photogenic countryside of Stardew Valley. You see, after his previous run-in with a prison cell, Brian had decided he was retiring from being a professional criminal. And so, disguising himself as an old rich man's grandson and performing a bit of tomfoolery with his will, he mysteriously managed to inherit the deeds to an old secluded farmhouse. Cheers, Grandad. This was perfect. He was right on the outskirts of Pelican Town, a small, loving community which conveniently didn't have a police station. And just to be extra sure there was no threat of being caught, he gave his new place a rather cunning name. This is Unsuspicious Farm. That's right, Robin. This is Unsuspicious Farm. Nothing to see here. Nothing to see here at all. It's a bit overgrown, but there's some good soil underneath that mess. No, there's nothing underneath anything. Do not check under the soil. You will not find any bodies. After the town carpenter, Robin, had finished showing him around, the mayor of Pelican Town, Lewis, arrived. Everyone's been asking about you. Oh god, they were onto him already. Listen, Lewis, just don't ask any more questions and nobody will get hurt. And with that, they left him alone to begin his first day on the farm. As any good criminal would do, Brian spent the morning of his first day sneaking around the bushes, searching for some good hiding places. With a solid hour of crouching around, he felt secure enough to begin farming. As a welcome present, the townsfolk had gifted him 15 parsnip seeds. Before he could plant them, however, he had to remove a few obstacles. Tim Burton! He screamed as he began chopping down trees. Tim Burton was one of his favourite directors. With a bit more rustle and tussle, in no time, Brian had whipped up a makeshift field. And as it wasn't even midday, there was still plenty of time to introduce himself to his new neighbours. First though, what is this? A leek? When he held the leek above his head, it gave the impression that he still had hair. Maybe this would make a good disguise for going into town, just in case anyone did recognise him from his wanted posters. Where to visit first then? Perhaps he could just start opening doors and walking into houses. Brian had never really lived anywhere aside from behind bars, so his manners weren't great, but who's this? Hello there. Oh, whoops, forgot the disguise. Just a sec. Hello there. Nice to meet you. What? Hey, he just stole my leek. George, that wasn't a present. I was using that. Ah well, it seemed to have worked as a good first impression anyway. And after gaining a bit of confidence, Brian went around introducing himself to the rest of the community. There was Pierre, who owned the local corner shop, Maru, the budding young scientist, Linus, who he could have sworn used to have a tech YouTube channel but now lived in a tent, Haley, the fashionista, who was pretty harsh about Brian's outfit. Look, it's a completely normal fit, Haley. I know it's got my name and inmate number on the chest, but it's not a prison jumpsuit, I swear. And after talking to village barkeep Emily, she invited him to do further meeting and greeting in the saloon that evening, where he bumped into, oh my goodness, who was this fine maiden? Pam? Brian had never seen a more beautiful woman in his life. She was, a raging alcoholic. Just his type. I'll be seeing you around, said Brian as he headed home and brought an end to a very successful first day. Onwards and upwards then, as Brian woke up on the 2nd of spring. Today was the day he would... Oh, wait, the parsnips haven't grown yet. Oh, what the hell? How long does this farming business take? Oh well. In the meantime, Brian decided to check his postbox, and, on doing so, discovered he'd received some mail from a mysterious man named... I can't say that name, that's rude. Intrigued by what this Willie had to offer, he headed down to the beach and walked out onto the pier. What he wasn't expecting was for Willie to give him his rod, his fishing rod, because Willie was a fisherman. Brian couldn't believe just how generous the townspeople were being, and Willie sent him on his way with yet another gift in the form of a cockle. Determined to be an actual active member of the local economy, rather than just relying on freebies, Brian headed to Pierre's and began to buy things. He bought some nice new wallpaper and mahogany flooring, which really gave his place a new pizzazz it didn't have before. Then he headed back to the pub to invest in a couple of their recipes. Ooh, hash browns. If Brian's parsnips ever grew, he would love to make some parsnip hash browns. And oh, hello again, Pam. Fancy seeing you here at 5 p.m. Say, how about I grab you a drink? Oh, what? 400 coins! Brian had got so caught up in injecting money into the community that he was now completely broke. Hanging his head in shame, he went back outside, depressed that he couldn't even afford to treat the woman of his dreams to one simple drink. And then it dawned on him that 32 schmecks had to last the rest of his whole retirement. If only there was some way to get rich quick. But then, in a moment of inspiration, Brian looked down at the cockle in his hands and recalled an old tongue twister. She sells seashells by the she-shell. Oh, god damn it, you get the point. At once, he ran back to the beach and gathered up any shells he could find, then dumping them into the collection box at home and tucking into bed, giddy with excitement, wondering just how much money they would go for. 200. Are you kidding me? That's it. Those were good quality shells. He had even evicted a couple of hermit crabs for those. Fine, it wasn't gonna be that simple. Brian would have to hark back to his days as a prison escapist and do what he did best, come up with an ingenious plan. The first thing to do was take the concept of selling shells one step further, and that meant stealing a leaf from Willie's book and doing some fishing. Brian was a bit of a dab hand with a fishing rod, so good in fact that he once escaped a prison in the middle of the sea by reeling in enough fish to tame a local dolphin and ride it to safety. Once Brian started fishing, you just couldn't stop him, and he spent the next 2 solid days doing nothing but. He fished in the river, he fished in the lake, he fished in the sea, pulling in all sorts of weird and wacky creatures. A catfish, an eel, a soggy newspaper, and something called a chub. Brian didn't care what they were, as long as they fetched a good price. 48 hours later, with a chest stock full of fish, he made the hard sell. See, that's more like it. 2 grand. But Brian wasn't satisfied just yet. The Great Fishing Marathon was merely the first stage of his plan. Yes, it was time for a cheeky bit of reinvestment. Okay, Brian, the grind don't stop, but oh, hello, Marnie. You're kind of blocking the doorway. I'm about to go make some big corporate moves, so what's that? Don't you think this farm could use a good cat? Oh god, this was a problem. Brian hated cats. The cat in question was, however, a stray, and if he rejected it, people might start assuming that he was like a bad person or something, which, sure, he'd committed a few felonies in the past, but oh fine, he would take the cat. He wasn't sure about the name Dudley though. If he was gonna have a cat, it needed a name of high stature. How about Pithro? I know it sounds a bit silly, but it's actually short for Pythrodames, which is a Greek philosopher's name. Come on then, Pythrodames, if you're gonna live here, we're gonna have to put you to work. Here, Pithro, manual labour time. Ugh, what's wrong with him? Is he dead or just... Oh, when he was on his belly like that, he was actually kinda cute, but no, Brian hated him. You stay there, Pithro. Giant Brian's gonna go and do some important business. Stage 2 of Brian's plan involved a whole load of... Oh, bloody hell, what is it now? Once again, Brian was interrupted, this time by Mayor Lewis, who proceeded to rant at him for ages about, I don't know, abandoned buildings or construction sites or something. Listen, Lewis, if the town hall is that derelict, just turn the place into an escape room or something. People love that kind of shit. What is that? Ew, vermin. Disgusting, horrible vermin. I take it all back, Lewis. Just demolish the place. Anyway, finally it was time for stage 2 of Brian's ingenious plan, and it involved beans. Brian had, in his day, spent a lot of time with various gangs around the UK, and he often overheard them using slang terms such as bear peas when referring to how much money they had. Now, Brian didn't really care about the bear part. He didn't want to attract bears to his farm, that was dangerous. But if it was true that peas equal money, he just had to give it a try. Unfortunately, Pierre only sold beans. But, beans, peas, tomato, potato. With that, he began to plant and plant and plant. Before long, rows and rows of green stalks cut his farm into beautiful, neat cross-sections. It was a sight to behold. Look at this, Pythrodames. Someday, my boy, this will all be yours. Now it was just the simple task of 10 whole days of watering. Oh god, Brian wasn't sure he had the energy for all this. And yet, day after day, he worked the fields tirelessly, can in hand, dribbling water onto each individual beanstalk. Having purchased so many, he barely had time to do anything else. But using the small amount of stamina he had left over, he spent his afternoons donating to the local museum, scouting out the abandoned mines, which were full of more vermin. Ooh, yuck, disgusting. What's this, bug meat? I'm about to be sick in my own mouth. And every day he returned home to find Piffro curled up on his bed. He obviously still hated Piffro with a passion, but it was warmer to snuggle up on these cold spring nights. It was a strategic decision purely for logical reasons, okay? Brian was about halfway through what he called Project Fee Fi Fo Fum when he received a rather peculiar letter from someone claiming to be a wizard. Yeah, alright Gandalf, whatever you say. But as Brian headed south out of town, to his surprise, he found a tall, crooked wizard's tower. He entered the building with great trepidation, and for good reason, as the wizard immediately proceeded to drug him with a strange potion. As a result, however, Brian found he could now communicate with the vermin he had seen in the old town hall. Apparently they were known as Junimos, and in return for various offerings, they would trade him a range of gifts. Sorry vermin, I'm kind of in the middle of a big pea project right now, so I'm gonna have to leave the story till later. And with that, Brian said no to progression and headed home to continue watering. Despite his refusal to play the actual game, no matter how hard he tried to just focus on peas, the story kept getting in the way. One evening he was watching Linus Tech Tips raid the village bins, which to be fair, as a fellow thief, Brian respected the hustle. The next day he was absolutely smoking a bunch of kids in the town's Easter egg hunt. Take that, you bunch of children. Nobody is better at swiping eggs than Giant Brian, except possibly Fantastic Mr. Fox and Swiper from Dora the Explorer. Finally, after more fishing and more watering and a bit of fishing and some vermin exterminating, bit more fishing and even more watering, on day 15, Brian woke up to a magnificent sight. Peas! So many peas. One could even say bear peas. My driller. And with a tear in his eye, he began the great harvest. Forget green fingers, over the next few days Brian had his hands so full of greenery, he had to make a whole new green chest just to store it all. With more than 100 peas in his possession, Brian decided it was time to sell. He couldn't wait to see the fat stacks come rolling in. Here we go. Oh, 4,000. Great. If he was honest, it was a bit of an underwhelming sum, but he supposed he had doubled his net worth, so he ran into town ready to rub his victory into Pierre's face. Oh, Pierre, guess who's created a pea-based capitalist empire? But, Something strange was going on at the general store. A sinister-looking man named Morris had walked in and begun preaching the potentially not-so-good word of a corporation known as Joja Mart. Coupons for 50% off. Brian's eyes suddenly lit up. This wasn't good. If Joja Mart was a supermarket, then Brian might not be able to resist. The temptation was too good to be true. Brian had been holding back the urges to raid the general store quite admirably, but considering his track record at Tesco, this Joja Mart that had moved into town, well, it just couldn't be a coincidence. This was a test, Brian told himself. Must not steal. Must not steal. Must not steal. Okay, I'm stealing. I'm stealing big time. This is a hit and run. Where are the Freddo frogs? Hand over the Freddos and nobody gets hurt.